Welcome to our 23rd podcast. Today we'll be talking about surviving a downsizing. How can you keep yourself motivated while your company is downsizing? And how can you help remaining colleagues thrive after that downsizing? Keep listening to find out. Welcome to Harmonious Workplaces, a podcast about corporate culture, organizational change management, and workplace behavior. Harmonious Workplaces was started by independent consultants Rich Cruz, Ben Kleinman, and Cheryl Volpe to explore, challenge, and build on various organizational culture and change management concepts. It's a blend of theory and practice based on their personal and professional experiences working with companies of all sizes across various industries. If you own a business, lead a team, want new ideas about the corporate environment, or just want to listen to a group of consultants talking about how to make work more enjoyable, we invite you to sit back, relax, and dive in with us to Harmonious Workplaces. Hello, Harmonious Workplaces listeners. As always, we're so glad to have you with us today. My name is Rich Cruz. I'm an organizational development consultant and here in the Chicagoland area. And I'm joined by my colleagues here, Cheryl Volpe. Hi, Cheryl.
Hey, Rich. Hi, everyone. Thank you.
And Cheryl is also a consultant working in the industrial organizational psychology space. And then we are also pleased to have Ben Kleinman. Hey, Ben.
Hey, everyone.
Ben's here in the Chicagoland area with me and specializes in change management, among other things. And we last time started talking about downsizing. And let me tell you, it sends a shiver down my spine as we think about that. You know, last week, like I said, probably should have come with a bit of a trigger warning. But the reality is it affects a lot of people, and it's continuing to affect a lot of people. So we thought we would continue the conversation this week in talking about those people who have kind of, quote unquote, survived the downsizing, those who are left in the company, right? So what are your thoughts today, folks?
Well, surviving.
Just to bring it. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Cheryl.
Just surviving is significant triumph, but there's a lot of extra pieces that go with it. Go ahead, Ben.
I was just going to sort of bring everyone along if they haven't had a chance to dig deep into our last podcast, just to kind of give some folks a sense of where we landed last time.
Yeah.
And
please.
Thinking about ways that you can be very thoughtful and intentional if you are leading a downsizing, or if you're in the midst of a downsizing, or if you're one of the people who are being downsized, or we refer to it as RIFT, reduction in force. And I think that means I get today's first acronym for the first time ever.
Oh,
how about that?
Ding, 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 ding.
Only 23 episodes in, right?
You get the prize.
Well, we did. Well,
and I present you, Ben, with this little Stanley Cup.
Oh, that is
to commemorate the first acronym of the day.
The little. Do I get a little hockey stick and little like?
And you get a whole mini team.
There you go. Right on.
Awesome. That's so cool. Thank you.
You win.
I should just
riff.
Just stop right there. How do you get any better than that?
No. You have to keep going. Talk about riffing.
What?
Not
so one of
not the good type of riffing with that guitar in the background there.
What I liked about our conversation last time is it resonated in terms of a lot of the themes that we've been talking about for some time now, in terms of being, as a leader, very intentional and thoughtful about what you're doing. Why are you doing this downsizing? How can you be transparent? Cheryl is always so great about reminding us to communicate and be very open in our communications. And how you can do that is those are some of the things that we talk through about being transparent, respectful. And in terms of that sort of middle management layer, or, even if you're just someone who's at the organization and maybe you're not a manager, but using some ideas that we came up with around looking for support within the organization, other groups of managers or middle managers, to get some help in terms of how do you help your staff members through this? How do you help your team members through this? And then also looking at other industry organizations and not necessarily sharing all the gory details, but looking at that from a peer group perspective. And so if you're in the midst of that, those are some of the tips or tangible things that one might be able to do to help get through that process. So we sort of got through that. And then today, I think we were going to dig a little bit more into okay, so now that downsizing has happened, it's day one after the downsizing, and you're at that company, you walk in the door. Now what? That kind of thing.
Sure. Well, let's discuss.
And we did talk about the stages of grieving when you get the news about yourself and losing your job. It happens when it's your colleagues too. Those are friends that you have gained through that job. You've been through a lot. You may have been in the trenches on some really high profile, high stress projects, and now they're not there and you are. And there can be some guilt with that, right? That you could be walking in. And I've participated in layoffs, and that first day in the office, I think a lot of the adjective that I recall the most is it feels kind of like a morgue when you go in there and you realize that desk and that desk and that desk is empty, and you have to get through that. That's real.
Right. Well, I even this last week, I've been participating in some training in manufacturing processes for the last few weeks, and so one of the staff members there, who was not laid off, by the way, just left, right? Found another opportunity. It felt like a hole was left in the organization. And it was, I think the organization handled it well because they communicated it, and they said, you opened the door and said, hey, if anybody wants to talk about this, because this was basically our point of contact, to the rest of the organization. So, that's one person. But when you have this group of people that may not be there anymore, it's certainly understandable to have those stages of grief, for sure.
And since you are both well steeped in org development and IO psychology, how have you guys seen it work best? What are some ideas that you've seen work really well in terms of helping people through that, helping people process that, grasp that it is real, it's happened, and there are lots of empty desks, or a key person in our org is no longer there? We're going to recognize it. We're going to get through it. What are some sort of very tangible things that you see work well to help people navigate through that process?
I would just say, Rich, as you just said, for me, the first thing that springs to mind is that open door policy. And when management and leadership takes the initiative to set up those one-on-ones right after, let's schedule a one-on-one. Let's talk about how you see your job now, what we can do to help you move forward, and also share some of that information that might be pertinent to your job now after the strategic decision to actually cut the force, right? So that communication, that open door, I would say, is number one.
I like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
I like that.
Something else along the same lines with that. So, how LinkedIn has those articles that they ask you to, participate in. And so I've still been trying to get to that, the change management one. I've made it to like the top 7%, but I haven't eked over that 5% one. But this kind of question was there of, how do you deal with change after it's happened, or a layoff after it's happened. And one of those little sections was addressing how it will affect those people, right? And so we have these needs, right? And one of those is the security and knowing how this affects me. It's similar to the types of um, needs that we have when it comes to our like how we think about marketing, right? In marketing, we're looking at what's in it for me oftentimes, right? When we're trying to talk to the person who's going to be buying, right? What's in it for them? What's the features and benefits and that type of thing? That translates, I think, pretty well to how we have to sell this new change, this new way of being, and even though it may have come with some pain, right? What's in it for them? Like how is this? How can they keep going? And how will it affect them? And if there's any positive light that you can bring to this, without blowing smoke up the skirt, it's probably that phrase is not aged well. but you know what I mean. Without really,
Without laying it on too thick. There is a margin.
Yes, right. Yeah. No subterfuge there. Like really, trying to address that. I think that's super.
Right. And companies will do this with the use of opportunity, right? You now have an extraordinary opportunity to shine brighter than ever. Right. And it's not untrue. But if you can frame it as an opportunity to excel or learn something new or test your own resilience, then that is a very positive outlook.
It is. It has to fit the culture of the organization. Some organizations that have never promoted opportunity or opportunistic thinking or growth mindset, if all of a sudden on this sort of post-downsizing day one, management is walking around saying, you guys have this great opportunity and we trust in all of you and you are now going to get the opportunity to shine bright, that's going to land with a thud. Whereas if you have that culture from the start and it's really a continuation of that mentality, even though you've lost a fair number of people will understand that it's just part of that corporate journey.
Right. And isn't this why new management will often try to take their teams with them? Because regardless of the culture that they are coming into, they have a team of people who understand how they work. And it's almost easier to bring a team of people who understand how you work into a foreign culture as opposed to trying to mold a culture that never had those things and suddenly be that. Or you set the steps, the most positive thing in a culture that doesn't have those things, you set the steps, use the one-on-ones and the marketing and the town halls and the PDF letters from HR to begin molding that culture in that direction. And that could be considered a transformational leader practically, right? You're transforming the culture.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I think it's important. For sure.
Well, let's take a quick break. When we come back, I want us to think about the managers who are left behind. So they end up being the intermediaries, right, between the line workers and the, so to speak, the visionary or the executives, right? So let's think about that, and we'll talk a little bit more after the break. See you in a second.
For Fortune 100 companies and small businesses alike, Harborside Strategy helps design and implement customized precision change management initiatives. From new organizational structures to new processes to new systems, we help you clarify the reason and urgency around your change in language that will resonate across your organization. With that clarity and a common purpose, we use the power of stories and blended communication methods to reinforce your goals and keep everyone focused and aligned. All of it tailored to your people, your organization, your needs. Contact Principal Ben Kleinman today to learn more at www.harborsidestrategy.com. Again, that is www.harborsidestrategy.com.
And we're back. So we're talking about those who have been able to stay within an organization after downsizing. And right now we're going to talk a little bit about the management of the people that, the managers of the people who are left behind. So I know SHRM here says, SHRM, the Society of Human Resources Management. I get my own ding, ding, ding for a second.
There you go. Well done, sir.
I gave myself accolades on that one.
You get your. We'll pass the trophy back to you.
I'll get the second place trophy.
Oh, I love it. Do you have Jeremy the Crab yet?
I don't have him with me right now, but there will be things coming in the future. Watch on the.
I think he's a cute guy. I think I saw him yesterday.
Baby. But SHRM talks about there are a few articles about RIFs, reduction in force, and those who stay behind. And what often happens is that managers tend to be, the middle managers tend to be left to their own devices sometimes, right? But you really need to make sure that you are giving them support, from above, and that they can maintain help them to maintain the relationships of the people that are reporting to them, right? Any thoughts on that part of it?
I will say that I've been in organizations where that level of management is not even brought into the closed door environment, which if you haven't done it before the RIF, you darn well better do it immediately after, or you will lose those people too. If not physically, their morale.
They check out. They lose trust. They lose faith in leadership for sure, Cheryl. Yeah.
Right. So that communication again there. And I realize we've all been on both sides of the curtain, right? We know that it's not always to a company's credit to share everything with everybody. You do have to be discerning when you have to pick and choose, but you have to understand how important it is to have the intention of communication on a consistent, reliable basis. Right? And I think those middle managers are so key to that structure of communication. You have to take care of them.
One of the things that I like we talked about last time, and I'll sort of reference that, and maybe we can expand on it today, is this idea that middle management rarely ever gets training on how to help people who are standing at a company after downsizing. Middle management often gets training on how to hire people or how to have difficult conversations with people about their performance or how to lead a team or things like that. But they seem to rarely get, at least in my experience, I've rarely seen companies go out of their way to help train middle managers on having those difficult conversations after a downsizing, helping people manage through those stages of grief, how to be more proactive about having that open door policy. It's I think a skill or a set of skills that could be trained at and given people upskilling in that at the right time.
Sure.
Have you guys seen companies do that really well?
In short, no. I mean, to be truthful,
well, maybe that's an opportunity then for companies who are struggling with that to talk to us about, how they can be a little more thoughtful, intentional, proactive about training the management layer that's going to be left holding the bag. Because you can't have the senior leadership interact with, at a certain size, C-suite can interact with everyone who's left on the shop floor. But after you get beyond a certain size, that's impossible. So you have to put your organizational trust and your organizational activation muscle is that middle management layer. And you need to empower those folks.
That's right. And human resources has traditionally filled a more business-oriented purpose. And that is an opportunity for folks in IO Office of Development, right? Development, change management. And I think that not that human resources can't do it, and a lot of cultures do put that in the human resource bucket. But it's not always a good fit
Sure.
because they have a whole set of other requirements that they have to fulfill, up to and including benefits and payroll, right? And middle managers have to do production and management. Not everyone has that extra layer of skill. So it's a great point, Ben.
Yep. And it feels to me that, companies often rely on HR to deliver some of that training, but we've talked about leadership before, right? And like the leadership challenge by Kuz and Posner, right? They talk about modeling the way. They talk about empowering your people, right? If you're relying solely on HR to do that type of thing, I don't see that that's like really change or change leadership. It's delegating something that should be coming from above, and these leaders have these leaders that have an opportunity to be transformational. They have a significant amount of power to affect the outcome, right? So if they can at least help to deliver the training, to communicate the vision of the new normal, right? I think that can be effective. I have seen that in some organizations where somebody's been let go, maybe not en masse, but where somebody's been terminated for one reason or another, where the leader has come in and talked about, well, here's the new normal. Here's how this is going to happen. By the way, managers, we're going to have a separate meeting so we can talk about how the team is going to work. And I've seen that really especially effective in smaller organizations because the aftermath is felt on a pretty wide scale, within that org.
I have an excellent example, and it just happened last week, where a person had to present a training module to a large group of people in a company, and it was on psychological safety. And this company was confronting a massive downsizing. And imagine the contradiction that if HR was presenting this kind of information and at the same time sending the letters about a severance package, that's another very difficult position and conflicting position. So again, companies, I do think, need to think about who is going to fulfill that role if it can't be HR, because that's opposing ideas there. Here's the idea of losing your job, but do you know what psychological safety is? Here's an example of a place that may have none. I mean, how do you reconcile those two ideas? But back to the point we're making. There has to be a body of people within an organization that has the responsibility of helping people through that. And it can't always be.
Sure. Yep. Yeah. And when we can't feel, I mean, where is that on Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Security, safety, that is just beyond it's right above physiological, right? So we have this need to feel like, okay, we made it through this and we're secure. There's some level of security there.
Yeah.
And support. Well, let's do this. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, let's think about some tips and how can we help the people that are have survived downsizing here. So we'll be right back in 1 second.
Are you struggling with high employee turnover, low morale, or poor communication within your team? Do you find it challenging to foster collaboration and trust among your employees? Do you have resistance to some of the recent changes you've made in your business? You're not alone. According to sources such as Forbes and the Society for Human Resources Management, many business owners face these same challenges. They know that success comes from a strong workplace culture, but they don't always know where to start. If this sounds like you, it's time to take action. Our experienced consultants stand ready to work with you to develop customized solutions. Don't wait any longer. Take our Quick Culture Scorecard today and discover where you can improve. Work Balance Consulting, where workplace culture meets success. Visit our website at www.workbalanceconsulting.com/scorecard and start your journey toward a better workplace today. Again, visit www.workbalanceconsulting.com/scorecard.
And we're back. All right. Well, we've talked about downsizing, people that are workers that have remained. We've talked about the managers who have remained and supporting them so they can help to support others. Let's wrap this up.
Specifically being thoughtful about preparing managers to help their teams who are surviving and downsizing. We've talked about how that is often a bit of a gap. And to Cheryl's recent point, it's often a bit of a sticky wicket in terms of you have one group of folks who is typically training people on opportunities. And at the same time, they're also giving the messaging about, here's your package on the way out the door. How do you balance that?
Right.
And so this need for finding the right messenger, having the right messaging in place, having some sort of structure or set of processes to train folks on having that open door, on how to be good listeners. Rich, you had a term last time around wearing your tomato suit. So how do you train people to be comfortable wearing a tomato suit? I think some people do that naturally, and some people find that very, very hard. There are a lot of things that companies can do to be a little bit more thoughtful and proactive to open up that space so that people can get those needs met in that, you reference Maslow's hierarchy, get their needs met and feel like there's going to be some level of stability. To your question, though, I think one thing that companies would do well to think about is if they're going to do a downsizing, not to do any other major changes or transformations on day one or day two or even day 30 right after that. Mm-hmm. People need a little bit of stability. They need to feel like they're getting their feet back on solid ground. It needs time to play out. You can't just assume that everyone who's there is ready to go full bore on day one after the downsizing. People need a period of time for some return to new normal, to co-create what that looks like, to realize that, there is that morgue feel, and it just takes time for that to feel like it's not a morgue anymore. Sure. Then you can start thinking about, we're going to roll out a new set of processes to rejigger how we do X, Y, or Z, or we're going to expand into a new market, or we're going to roll out our end-to-end ERP system, whatever it is. You can't. Doing that on day two is going to just make it very, very hard, and make it even harder than if you could just think through it a little bit more ahead of time.
Yeah. And I like what you said about bringing up the tomato suit concept, just so everybody knows what that is. My mentor, Alan Landers, from the Drucker School of Management, he talked to us about wearing your tomato suit, which comes from the vaudeville days where a performer would go out and lay everything out on the line, and if a joke didn't land, you might be pelted with tomatoes. So don't wear your best suit on stage, right? And you may think that that's like an individual thing, and that can't be trained. And I will tell you that having taken the course, that is something that actually can be trained. Is how can management, the people, and even the leadership above, how can they prepare themselves to be resilient in the face of negative feedback that's going to be coming at them, right? And there's where some outside help can be of benefit. Having coaches or consultants that have been trained in how to help people through getting that feedback and how to internalize it, process it, pause, breathe, and then react. I think that's something that organizations could do very well, and it would go a long way.
Yeah. I would say that, and that's so great, Rich. I could see you selling those tomato suits. You could bring those back. They could just be red fabric. They could be like a tarp. They could be resilient. RichCruise.com tomato suit.
A tarp suit. Boy, that doesn't sound comfortable at all.
Little mini trophies as fabulous gift and prize. We've got Shermie swag, and now we've got tomato suit.
Right.
We're building our inventory, our virtual inventory of
so
products. So
the OD inventory, I like it.
Nice.
Shop now on richcruise.com.
Yeah, heading into troubled waters, we've got just the thing.
Right.
So listening to the two of you with your takeaways, it made me think that I think on an individual level, a personal level, no matter what level of company you are at, it's important not to internalize what is happening within the company as a matter of your own failing or your own lack of insight or initiative or skills, none of that. When these things happen, it's on a much bigger scale than any one individual. And if you can remember that when you walk back in that door, everyone is affected in a different way by that change. And if you can just keep the humanity, even in your attitude when you show back up, try not to be angry or resentful towards the people still on your team. Try to instead choose that camaraderie. And what do we have in common now? If you can.
That's right. If you can, it is a very difficult thing to do all the time, right? To put on a smile or even just shoulder the weight, So find some support for sure. There are support mechanisms out there. If you don't have your own healthcare, there are even some free hotlines that you can call to talk to somebody, right? I think that's a remarkably good tip is, try not to internalize it, but at the same time, sometimes we do need to express that. So talking it out can help, quite a bit.
Yeah. And everyone will have his or her own or their own coping mechanisms. Some people like to talk about stuff. Some people like to go for a run or, go work out at the gym or just be outside in nature or meditate for a while, whatever that might be. I think that the theme I'm getting is from both of you is just that it's important to recognize that it's not just you that's going through this, that everyone is going through this, and to have just a little bit more of that understanding buffer, if you will, to recognize that everyone is struggling, whether they're showing it or not, whether they're experiencing it very deeply or just a little bit. Everyone is going through some form of processing this big event, and to try to recognize that can also be empowering for yourself and help take away that personal grief and that the personal element of survivorship, maybe.
Yeah.
Right. That's right.
One thing I wanted to bring, just a thought that came, because Cheryl, you started this conversation a while back about communication being key, right? And that got me thinking about how communication works, right? So there's a message. The message gets coded in language, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have a channel that gets to the receiver. Within that channel, there's not resistance.
Resonance.
No. What is that? Where the message gets distorted. If I'm on a walkie-talkie and I get the type of thing, right? That
it's like the telephone game where everyone repeats the message and it gets slightly interpreted slightly differently, or it gets repeated slightly differently. And by the end of it, you get around the circle and, someone started talking about mint chip ice cream at the beginning, and then they're talking about a Ford Focus car at the end. And you're like, how did we get there?
How did we get there?
Interference.
Right. Yeah.
Interference.
There you go. Perfect. That's exactly the word. Thank you, Cheryl. So that interference, right, is on any channel, right? I mean, it could be, the Jerry Seinfeld low talkers, if anybody remembers that. That doesn't translate well in a podcast.
Not a good strategy for your change management initiative.
Yes, yeah, you're going to find yourself not wearing a tomato soup, but a puffy shirt. But so you have that interference, and then the person receiving the message, right? The receiver has to get the message, decode it, and then understand it, right? And then you have this feedback loop that happens, right? So you have to be open to receiving that across the channel again, right? I bring all that up because I don't think we always are thinking about how we code, what that interference is. And so I think if we're intentional about that and intentional about providing the feedback and reducing the interference as it comes back to us, organizations could be in a better position to, manage those changes. Well, no matter what the changes are, but especially in a situation like this.
Absolutely, being intentional with that process, which is very real, and not everyone understands that can be thrown off the track at any one of those steps without keeping it streamlined and bringing it back to that original message. The coding, the interference, the repeat, the feedback, all of it can take it just a little further off track.
Yeah. Right.
I'm going to take a note that we should expand that on a future podcast, because I think there's a lot of meat there, and we probably could do a fair bit of discussion unpacking all that and explaining how all that works, how each of those steps works, and tips, tricks, tools that we can provide for folks at each step of the way to make sure that they are aware that there could be gaps or transmission, encoding loss, feedback loss, all that kind of stuff, interference.
Yeah.
And ways to mitigate that, or at least be aware of when something is getting distorted, how to recognize that and correct for that ahead of time.
Sure.
I think that probably deserves a lot more of our effort and energy than just bolting it on to the end of an episode.
Totally agree.
Yeah. Sure.
But I'm glad you tacked it on at the end, Rich. I mean,
well, thank you.
It's a tease. It's teasing it out.
So much as we part ways.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've a couple of these takeaways, right? So we need to support our managers, right? So I'll say that. What else can we wrap this up with?
As shallow as it sounds, you cannot take it personally. You have to go through the process, but you cannot assume responsibility for other folks losing their jobs,
Sure.
Or surviving their jobs. Yeah.
Or something.
I think maybe one of the things that keeps resonating with me is this idea that in so many changes and transformations, there's a focus on execution, on just, we're going to do this. We're going to roll out the new system. We're going to introduce these new SOPs and train standard operating procedures. We're going to train everyone on these new ways of working. That's two in one.
But two for you. You win.
Look at what you guys are doing to me. You're completely. Oh, it's horrible. Whereas there's this, I don't want it. No. In this type of organizational transformation where you have people that are being affected in a very personal way, I think in so many others, the focus can be, and rightly so, on a better balance, or maybe more focus on execution and less on the emotional side.
Yeah.
People tend not to get as emotional about having to use a new computer system. There's some, but it's not as personal. Whereas I think in this side, the balance has to shift, and you have to really lean into, as a leader, as a middle manager, as a colleague, really lean into the emotionality of it and maybe soft pedal the execution side. So if people are not necessarily as productive on day one or day two after the downsizing, give people a little space to breathe and just let people resonate with their emotions, discuss things, and then encourage them to start building back into their new normal, co-creating what that new normal looks like, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. It seems like there's a need for that in this situation.
Yeah. Sounds so practical and absolutely sensible.
Sure. And often overlooked, unfortunately.
So. And sometimes not in the
All right.
Yeah.
Tune in next time when you can win the guitar signed by YouTube behind Cheryl in our video.
Oh, I'll have to talk to the proud owner of it.
I don't know about that, man. It's pretty awesome.
It is pretty cool. It is
very cool.
It's a beautiful guitar.
I'm on vacation.
And no, you can't win it. I'm just teasing.
Yeah. I thought these guys would appreciate it as I am away from my home studio. So I don't know. My mom
absolutely
didn't make it.
Yeah. So we need somebody else to sign us off today. And Ben, that's going to be you, buddy. You have a mug.
I have an ugly mug, but I also have a Harmonious Workplaces mug.
I mean.
All right, everyone. Thanks for such a good conversation. I really appreciate it. And till next time, make change your friend.
Thank you both.
Thanks a million. See you all later.
See you, everyone.
Thanks for listening to Harmonious Workplaces. You can find Harmonious Workplaces on LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, Spotify, Amazon, Apple, and other streaming platforms. We'd love any feedback on whatever channel you find us on. Please rate, like, and share our podcast with your network. And remember to add Harmonious Workplaces to your list of favorites to get notified about each new episode. To contact Rich or Cheryl, please visit www.workbalanceconsulting.com. To connect with Ben, find him on LinkedIn or visit at www.harborsidestrategy.com.